Coming up in today's Jamaica Magazine, a look back at the major achievements of the Ministry of Local Government in 2021, plus signs, symptoms and treatment options for bladder cancer. But first, we have the news after this message. I'm Adrian Atkinson. Stay tuned.
What are we full of our roots and culture? That was in Jamaica 60. Jamaica 60? What a piece of news, Miss Matty. I feel like my heart going bust up.
Just in, the island of Jamaica is on the verge of celebrating its 60th year of independence.
I only we have to celebrate it now. They say the people them, them come here, you know. But you see, when our people decide, say the other people them free paper, bono, them say if it's war, start it, whatever. We all collect medal, panta, medal. Amount of tongue we give them,
The celebrations are slated to begin on January 1st, 2022. Organized by the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. We have more in this report.
On site and planning activities are ablaze. Persons are advised to download the Reggae Jamaica app to know what it pre. Activities for the Jamaica 60 celebration.
Yeah. I don't know the app to get the updates then.
Good day, I'm Lorraine Mendez and this is your JIS News for Tuesday, January 25. The newly appointed JDF Chief of Defence Staff and Commissioner of Police have jointly assured Cabinet that the police and the Army are closely collaborating on measures to address the security challenges currently affecting the country. Rear Admiral Antoinette Weems-Gorman and Major General Anthony Anderson briefed the Cabinet yesterday as government moves more aggressively to cauterize gang violence in several areas across the island. The Commissioner of Police revealed that the police have started particular initiatives across the island that are aimed at reducing murders, the majority of which are due to lotto scamming and gang warfare. The Chief of Defence Staff detailed preventative efforts being placed on border control, as well as medium and long-term strategies geared at addressing both the incidents and culture of violence. The heads of the JCF and the Army outlined their recommendations in relation to how the security forces can be assisted in the fight against crime. According to a statement from the Office of the Prime Minister, Cabinet acknowledged the importance of the soon-to-be-tabled amendments to the Firearms Act and the Bail Act, as well as other initiatives government plans to implement in the short and long term to support the efforts of the security forces on the ground. Meanwhile, the JDF's Chief of Defence Staff says she remains committed to changing the culture of violence, as stated in the Jamaica Defence Force's Strategic Defence Review. The Force Strategic Defence Review charts the JDF's course up to 2037.
As we deal with issues of safety and security as a nation, I am confident that the JDF is prepared to confront the challenges to our peace and security.
Rear Admiral Weems-Gorman was addressing the change of command parade at Up Park Camp in Kingston on Friday. The Chief of Defence Staff pledged to lead by example and called on members of the force to commit to serving in the interest of the entire nation as the country confronts the challenges to peace and security.
Our Defence Force must maintain its steadfast support and commitment to our citizens and work diligently to defeat the threats to our collective safety and secure existence.
And as government doubles down on its planned Secure Jamaica strategy, National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang says ensuring at least the basic level of education for at-risk persons is critical to the crime reduction aspect of the program. He says billions of dollars are being spent on education, yet fewer students in this category are graduating.
We are not going to have success in retraining our young people in a sustainable manner until the education system works. We must have heart and other systems that catch them at a second chance and cater to the 15 to 30-year-old who are it is a recruitment era where we get our killers from and the murderers. And they are the victims as well. If the basic education system fails, what we are doing is putting them on a treadmill. Because you train 5,000 this year and 7,000 join next year.
The minister was speaking at Thursday's launch of the Government of Jamaica and the European Union Partnership to Support Citizen Security. He says social interventions such as access to quality public health care by persons living in at-risk communities is another way of providing care from the infant stage. The minister says the zones of special operations will also help the state regain control over communities that have been subjected to criminal activities and implement programs designed to transform these areas.
There is no alternative but strong, efficient policing in the first phase to remove the violence producers, control them, and get them out of the space. And simultaneously focus our efforts on the citizens who are under pressure, whose entire rights have been removed by brutal criminals who have neither thought nor care except themselves.
In other news, the Ministry of Health and Wellness says with data showing that over 90% of COVID-19 hospitalizations are unvaccinated, this supports the effectiveness of the vaccine to minimize the full effect of the virus. The data shows that 99% of the overall death toll also represents unvaccinated persons. With 4 brands of COVID-19 vaccines available every day at over 250 access points island-wide, Portfolio Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says the onus is on Jamaicans to take personal responsibility for protecting their health.
Hospitalization and the most extreme death is largely, overwhelmingly, almost exclusively linked to persons who are unvaccinated. And I don't know if that this chart and if this message can be any clearer. You run a significantly higher risk of dying from COVID-19, particularly if you have other complications, if you do not have your vaccine.
Dr. Tufton was speaking at the ministry's last weekly COVID Conversations briefing. Up to noon on January 21, a total of 1,279,090 doses of a COVID-19 vaccine have been administered across the island. Data published from Monday shows that 559 persons are hospitalized, of which 117 are moderately ill, 60 severely, and 24 critically.
We have prepared and continue to prepare our hospitals. I'm hoping in the next week or so the field hospital in Westmoreland will be open, and we continue to make the necessary arrangements to support our medical team to prepare themselves and to deal with the situation as we see it.
And finally, with the country's COVID-19 positivity rate at 46%, the Ministry of Health is reminding the public that restrictions under the Disaster Risk Management Act remain in effect. These include mask wearing, gathering in public spaces not exceeding 10 persons, and the quarantine of persons arriving from overseas. Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says the measures are necessary as the government seeks to balance lives and livelihoods.
We continue to have the protocols that have been established to minimize the spread of COVID-19 and continue to encourage Jamaicans, all of us, to abide by those protocols.
Dr. Tufton is urging persons with respiratory or flu-like illnesses to remain at home or in isolation until fully recovered and seek medical attention where necessary. And that's it for JI's News Today. I'm Lorraine Mendez. Thanks for watching.
We continue our program with more news, this time from the office of the Prime Minister.
Prime Minister opens new Foreign Affairs building, welcomes first female head of the Jamaica Defence Force, and receives a report aimed at transforming the island's education system. You're watching Jamaica House Weekly. I'm Anthony Morgan.
In our 60th year of independence, we must commit to making the transformation of our education system one of our most important priorities, if not the most important priority.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness, as he received the Reform of the Education in Jamaica 2021 report. The 342-page document was compiled by the Jamaica Education Transformation Commission, JETC. It provides a blueprint for the establishment of a comprehensive strategy to improve student performance and education productivity. Mr. Holness says a monitoring and oversight committee will be set up by month end to manage the implementation of the 54 prioritized recommendations from the report. The Ministry of Education will have overarching responsibility for implementing those recommendations and is to submit a detailed execution plan complete with timelines.
As far as possible, we must use the existing resources within the ministry, and where there are capacity gaps, we must build capacity to address those gaps.
In the meantime, the JETC has been tasked with leading a 6-month institutional review of the Heart NSTA Trust. In addition to a comprehensive review of Heart's organization and output, the Prime Minister says the JETC will recommend changes to improve the entity's effectiveness.
The review will look at the demand side of TVET, considering how to enable the Jamaican TVET system to better meet the needs of young people, employers, government policy priorities, and the economy, as well as the supply side, considering how to build capacity and capability.
Later in the week, the Prime Minister was on Port Royal Street in downtown Kingston to officially open the new headquarters of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. The building was named in honor of the island's third Prime Minister and the longest-serving Minister of Foreign Affairs, the late Hugh Lawson Shearer.
Hugh Shearer's management of his portfolio at the Foreign Ministry was imbued with his conviction of the inextricable link between domestic and foreign policy.
Mr. Holness says the new complex will support the ministry's critical role in ensuring Jamaica's quest to achieve economic prosperity, as well as inclusive and sustainable development.
As the first point of contact for our bilateral, regional, and multilateral partners, you are ideally placed to ensure that our partnerships give practical meaning to our national objectives through your foreign policy engagements.
The fit-for-purpose building, which spans 11 stories, accommodates 285 staff members across 17 departments. The ministry's complex was built as a gift from the People's Republic of China. Mr. Holness used the occasion to announce plans to build more fit-for-purpose government facilities in the island's 60th year of independence, being celebrated this August. Work will start this year on the Houses of Parliament complex to be erected at Heroes Circle.
These are not edifices to ourselves, to burnish our egos. This is to ensure that we can have efficiency in the administration of public affairs. There are those who would want to see tighter rules, but we have to reach a reasonable balance. Tighter rules could mean less work, it could mean less economic activity, less income, and that could also mean more social problems. But nevertheless, I believe we all understand that it is now down to us.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness, as he made a case for maintaining the current COVID-19 control measures. There have been calls to tighten restrictions to manage the current fourth wave of the pandemic. But Mr. Holness rebutted with his own call for greater social and personal responsibility to contain the spread of the coronavirus.
That we must act responsibly. Each citizen must do their part. The government can only do so much. Government has limits.
On Thursday, the Prime Minister was on hand to welcome the new Chief of Defence Staff at the Jamaica Defence Force, JDF. Rear Admiral Antoinette Weems Gorman is the 12th head of the JDF and the first woman to lead a country's army. She takes over from Lieutenant General Rocky Meade, who retired after 5 years in the post. At the virtual swearing-in ceremony at King's House, Mr. Holness, who is the Defence Minister, expressed confidence in Rear Admiral Weems Gorman's ability to lead the JDF.
I look forward to benefiting from her wise counsel on matters related to defense and security. The Rear Admiral's many years in the JDF Coast Guard has allowed her to treat significantly with issues relating to maritime security and the blue economy. She will therefore bring a unique perspective to our discussions and our efforts to strengthen our borders and prevent illicit inflows, to protect the lives and livelihoods of our coastal communities, and to ensure that Jamaica can derive sustainable benefit from our maritime resources.
On Friday, the Prime Minister was at Up Park Camp to participate in the change of command parade for the new Chief of Defence Staff. Friday also saw Mr. Holness meeting with several Maroon leaders at the office of the Prime Minister. Among the leaders were colonels from Scots Hall, Moortown and Charlestown. The meeting was also attended by Culture Minister Olivia Grange and Minister without Portfolio Robert Morgan. The group committed to continuing positive engagements between the Maroons and the government. Upon hearing of the re-election of Mia Mottley as Prime Minister of Barbados, Mr. Holness sent congratulations to the neighbouring head of government. The Prime Minister expressed confidence that under Mottley's leadership, Jamaica and Barbados will continue to share strong bilateral relations. Ms. Mottley's Barbados Labour Party secured all 30 seats in the country's parliament for a second consecutive term in a general election.
For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for himself.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness reading the first lesson at the 2022 National Leadership Prayer Breakfast. Proceeds of the fundraising event went to the Clifton Boys' Home in Darliston, Westmoreland. And that's it for Jamaica House Weekly. Be sure to join us next time for more of the news stories coming out of the office of the Prime Minister.
In 2021, the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development played a critical role in the island's COVID-19 fight, keeping the country clean and more. Find out about the year that was for this ministry next.
It is a story about how local government is helping central government to ensure that Jamaica is turning the corner and recovering stronger.
In 2021, the Local Government Ministry was a critical partner in managing the public health protocols and laying the foundation for Jamaica's recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic at the community level. A vaccine ambassador program was launched with individuals engaged to head into communities island-wide, encouraging persons to get vaccinated. The 6,000 young people engaged under the 2021 Youth Summer Employment Program also supported the vaccination drive. Councillors received financial support to organize vaccination blitzes, while scores of homeless persons were inoculated. The minister piloted legislation introducing a specific enforceable system of sanctions with fixed penalties for breaching the COVID-19 public health protocols. In partnership with the Ministries of Health and Sport, an events authorization system was created, allowing fully vaccinated Jamaicans to witness an event in person for the first time since the pandemic forced the shutdown of spectator sports in 2020.
We are anticipating that once this app is rolled out and we have seen the benefits of it, then we will be using this going forward.
100 hand-washing stations were installed at infirmaries, municipal buildings and town centres through a donation from Digicel Jamaica. And near the end of the year, protocols were established for face-to-face visits at infirmaries and Golden Age homes for a limited period.
They must be fully vaccinated and must present a COVID test, a negative COVID test. The Ministry of Local Government is responding in real time.
In response to the housing needs of the poor and vulnerable, work began on a project to deliver 100 indigent houses during the 2021-2022 financial year. New wards were constructed and opened at the Manchester and St. James infirmaries, while construction started on a state-of-the-art kitchen at the Lucy Infirmary.
And we now have in all our infirmaries modern equipment.
The ministry also broke ground on a $25 million homeless shelter in Falmouth and continued to upgrade the condition of markets across the island.
Our disaster coordinators have been doing all the things necessary to secure shelters during the period and ensure that the isolation wards are in place.
ODPEM developed a national tsunami response plan and standing order procedure for Jamaica, published earthquake safety and emergency numbers in Braille for visually impaired and blind Jamaicans, entered into a partnership with the Digicel Foundation to make the emergency shelters at 5 schools more accessible to persons with disabilities, and shipped more than $20 million worth of supplies to St. Vincent and the Grenadines as part of Jamaica's disaster relief aid in the wake of the eruption of La Soufriere volcano. The capacity to fight fires was expanded.
15 trucks are here, and an additional 15 is coming by the end of September.
Phase 1 of the $60 million renovation of the Black River Fire Station was completed, and the Ochiria Station received a much-needed facelift. As it continued to keep Jamaica clean, the NSWMA launched a solid waste reduction program in Chambers, Pen Hanover, a plastic bottle separation project in the Meadows of Irwin community in St. James, and continued the Dromedy Gate initiative. $650 million was budgeted to install infrastructure and develop several communities under the Rural Development Program.
We will use this program to give new life to rural communities over the next 2 years.
The ministry welcomed the donation of 10 GPS devices from the United Nations Development Program that will, among other things, aid research and field work to inform the Rural Development Program. From its own resources, $110 million was allocated to build out more water shops across the island. The Rural Water Supply Limited renovated the Innswood Underground Water Recharging Station in St. Catherine.
Some $350 million will be spent on roads across the country through the local authorities. The ministry will be financing an island-wide rural electrification program to the tune of $189 million. The people and institution of local government has been severely tested, but the challenges have brought out our resilience and our resolve to increase our reach and the quality of service.
If you take care of your body, eat a variety of nutrients, exercise, don't stress too much, staying away from unhealthy substances, the body will usually take care of you. But sometimes even with our best efforts, things can go wrong. And when that happens, having information on signs, symptoms and treatment of a particular illness is crucial. Coming up, the ins and outs of bladder cancer.
According to the World Health Organization's World Health Ranking, someone in Jamaica is more likely to lose their life from prostate cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, stomach, cervical, liver, uterine, and even ovary cancer before they'll ever go from bladder cancer. Now, the rarity of this illness drafted local statistics at 0.34% of the total number of deaths in the island in 2018. That's only 62 people. But of course, that's 62 people too many. And maybe, just possibly, 62,000 people not having ever heard of this disease until now.
So the bladder is a small muscular organ that is in the pelvis, deep down in the pelvis. Its purpose is really to store urine. Now, cancer, as has been said before, it refers to the unregulated abnormal growth of cells, and in this case it would be the bladder. So bladder cancer is unregulated growth, usually from the lining of the bladder, that is abnormal cell growth. So the signs and symptoms of bladder cancer, usually the commonest sign is usually hematuria. Now what hematuria is blood in the urine. So usually it's painless hematuria, maybe painful hematuria, which is pain along with blood in the urine. Also, there may be irritative bladder symptoms, or as we would say, storage, lower urinary tract symptoms. Some of these include urgency, frequency, going to the bathroom frequently, waking up often at nights, it's known as nocturia, and in general, some dysuria, which is like burning when you pass your urine.
Now, before you experience any of those symptoms, there are some causative factors that lead to bladder cancer that you may want to assess first. It simply means that while it happens, it's usually preventable.
The commonest causative factor for bladder cancer is cigarette smoking. It's actually associated with about 50 to 60% of bladder cancers. There are other risk factors which are known as occupational hazards. So individuals who work in the industries and have prolonged exposure to aromatic amines, aromatic hydrocarbons. So in the textile industry, painters, those who work with tar, amongst other occupational hazards, are at risk for bladder cancer. Patients who also have, for whatever reason, they'll have chronic irritation to the bladder. So there's a parasitic infestation known as schistosomiasis that's really associated with bladder cancer also. Patients who have chronic catheters, indwelling catheters, as well as bladder stones and a few other things that cause chronic irritation to the bladder.
Now, bladder cancer is very picky when it comes down to gender, with the likelihood of displaying its sprouting behavior on men more often than women. And while the data shows that you don't necessarily need to be thinking about this until you're well over your 40s, there is proof that it affects many of us who are nowhere near to collecting our pension. Wow.
The older you become is the more at risk you are. Usually not before the age of 40 that bladder cancer is seen. It's more common in the 5th to 6th decades of life. 5th, 6th, 7th decades of life. It's actually more common in men than women, and this is thought to be associated with lifestyle amongst other things. Bladder cancer is very treatable. In fact, most bladder cancers present as organ-confined disease, meaning that they're absolutely curable. The treatment options include definitely surgery. This involves what is known as a transurethral resection of the bladder to actually get diagnosis, and in some cases is curative if the tumor is completely gotten. This involves passing instruments through the urethra, which is the opening through which you pass urine from the bladder, and that allows us to see the tumor. It allows us to resect or scrape the tumor away from the bladder wall, and in some cases we may or may not give intravesical immunotherapy or chemotherapy depending on the risk of the disease. But that's usually how bladder cancer is initially treated.
So now may be a good time to just pause for a bit and think about the causes, signs, and symptoms of bladder cancer. And if you've been treated from it before, remember to get your regular checkups, because bladder cancer has a high recurrence rate. Watching from the sidelines or the confines of a bed can be a bit of a sting for some. caring for others. So let's go stronger and healthier together by prioritizing our health.
We've come to the end of this edition of Jamaica Magazine. Visit our JIS YouTube channel or website to watch this or any other show. And don't forget to visit our social media pages and leave a comment or like. On behalf of all of us here at the GIS, I'm Adrian Atkinson. Thanks for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.